It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, we're getting ready for the ANARC 75th Dimond Jubilee event in Cortland, New York. A couple of tip-top tips, the Dunsfold Collection Museum opens, and Land Rovers in history. And now, without delay, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Barris, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at thebarriscollection.com or follow us on Instagram at thebarriscollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I am the 6-bolt hub to Steven's 5-bolt hub. I'm the superfluous fastener of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, this week we are officially in ANARC Week. World ANARC Week. Greek Peak starts on Wednesday, I guess.
So soon. Very soon.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there Wednesday. We're flying in from the beautiful West Coast.
I'm pedaling my bike as we speak.
We're going to head out there. And, Steve Owen is he's driving his Series 1 from Milwaukee to Greek Peak.
It's true. I've been sending him parts to make that happen for his vehicle. And he just sent all of his brake cylinders for us to resleeve. Yeah.
In time for the trip?
I think we sent him some that we had already resleeved, and these are the cores so that we can, so he was able to get going in time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, if you haven't listened to this month's Center Steer podcast, Steve is on there talking about his car and getting there.
I wonder what percentage of Steve Carr has originated in Oregon.
That's a great question. He speaks extensively about your help getting his car moving and steering and all of that sort of stuff. It sounded like it had some kind of improvised steering system when he found it, and that needed to be replaced and is now going. And it sounds like a great car. And he and a few other folks are heading all the way up. They're going to be in Canada for a little bit, and then they're dipping back down to head to Greek Peak. So we'll see him there on Thursday, which is going to be the sort of the first day of official festivities, if you will. Which is going to be great.
Look for the giant British man who sells fireplaces. That will be Steve Owen.
Yeah,
who's been crammed into an 80-inch for many thousands of miles.
Well, that's the thing. He's like 6'2", right? I mean, he's
I
think
he's
6'5". He's a big gentleman. And the 80-inch is not a big man's car. You know,
kind of looks like small. At least it's a narrow transom car, so he's got a little bit more legroom.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It's going to be great. So we are doing a whole week's worth of things there, or a whole 4 days worth of things there, starting off bright and early on Thursday morning. Our good friend Jeff Aronson and I will be doing the ANARC daily live show, 15 minutes every morning, kicking off the day, talking about what's happening over the course of that day, what happened the day before, etc. Maybe being joined by some fabulous guests, giving away some prizes. Who knows? So if you are, in fact, in Greek Peak, if you're enjoying the festival, please come down to the podcast lounge. You're welcome anytime. And come see what Jeff and I get up to first thing in the morning, if you'd like. If not, and you're maybe not at Greek Peak, then check it out on YouTube. It's going to be on our YouTube channel every day. The live show will be there, so you can check in. You can see what everybody got up to. And the podcast lounge is located there in the dealer area from 10 until noon every day. You'll be able to see either Ike and I or John Kosich and the gang from the Center Steer podcast, Morgan, Harold, and Dixon. They are going to hang out there as well. We're going to be doing interviews during that time. We're going to be hanging out and doing sticker trading or merch selling or whatever it is that you guys want. So come on down and please say hello. And then, of course, Thursday night, the epic crossover podcast event, the Center Steer Underpowered Hour podcast live show. So sort of kick off the event there Thursday night. There is going to be Team Underpower versus Team Center Steer in a matching of wits, maybe feats of strength.
There will be expired vegetables available at the door.
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. You guys are really going to enjoy that. And then a band afterwards. It's going to be great. So, yeah, if you have time, there is still tickets available and things. Even pop up for a day. I think it would definitely be worth it if you're in the area. You know, if you haven't booked your plane tickets from the UK yet, you may want to get on that because it's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. So, all your favorite North American Land Rover owners will be there.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait. There's a constant murmur of how many Freelanders are going to be there. So we'll see.
Somewhere between 0 and 0.
Yeah, I think probably at this point,
Which is all the running ones.
It's all the running ones. That's all the running ones. Somebody did sell me. There's one in Pennsylvania. I was talking to John Kosich today, and I was saying, hey, well, there's this one in Pennsylvania. He's like, yes, I've been sent that no less than 6 times. And I'm like, that sounds about right. Yeah, that's awesome. Me too. I've got like an anonymous Facebook DM or two with that in there. So I appreciate folks sending us those our way.
Speaking of Freelander enthusiasts and important events.
That's right.
We have got to talk about the opening of the Dunsfold Museum.
That's right. The most famous Freelander collector in the world. And also, I would say, the largest collection of Freelanders in any one place, as well as many hundreds of other remarkable Land Rovers, but most notably the first Freelander or the most purple Freelander or the whatever. He's got one of everything. Our good friend Phil Bashel. Mm-hmm. Finally, it's been hotly anticipated. I mean, I think it's fair to say it's the event of the summer. I think
Phil's been working on this for a while. He's been cleaning out the former Dunsfold Land Rover works in order to make it into a museum facility, and he's been prepping the collection. I saw a picture of Nick Dimbleby over there washing cars, which he's very good at.
He is good
I think he's a wonderful photographer, but really I think his skills lay in the custodial arts when it comes to cleaning.
Yeah, valeting old muddy Land Rovers is really his calling. That's where he missed his absolutely. It's a spiritual connection there. I think that you can really tell he's into it.
You should all come down there and support Phil and his efforts at curating and maintaining the world's largest collection of important Land Rovers.
Absolutely.
He's a super great guy and wonderful fellow and deserves all of the wonderful things that Land Rover enthusiasts can bestow upon him. He really does a wonderful job of keeping history alive there at the museum.
Yeah, without question. And some really, really remarkable cars that, you just wouldn't see them anywhere else. And if it wasn't for Phil, they would have met the scrap heap or been corroded away in some barn in the somewhere. And so he really has not just a fabulous collection, but is really a fabulous member of the community, a great conservator. And like you said, just an all around great guy. He's a lot of fun.
All around swell fellow, and he has my favorite Land Rover conversion, the Land Rover baggage handler.
Yes, absolutely. The baggage handler, I know, is your favorite one. It's a great car. It's a great car. Well, speaking of baggage handlers and their connection loosely to Phil's giant Freelander collection, we have a tip-top tool tip this week, and this is again, as all things on this show is, as you know now, I relate in some way to a Freelander. I was sent the iLand diagnostic tool from our good friends at Atlantic British. I was sent it because I paid for it, and then they sent it to me. That's how that worked.
Sponsorship angle didn't work.
Yeah, it didn't work out. No, and they were just like, no, they actually had to pay more for it.
Pay more.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, not only are we going to send this to you at extra cost, we're going to make sure that you don't mention it on your show.
Please don't talk about it. Don't say you got it.
We don't need any more Freelander owners calling us.
And they have this iLand diagnostic tool. It's pretty cool. It is specific to Land Rovers. So what that means is that they've taken all of the weird OBDII codes that the computer spits out, and they've Googled all the different Land Rover specific information for it, and they've put it in there. And it's pretty neat, I have to say. It runs on a little Bluetooth thing that goes into your OBDII port. This is the first vintage Land Rover I've ever had with an OBDII port. And it gives you all the codes, of which the Freelander had many. So we're working our way through those. It looks like new oxygen sensors need to go in to hopefully solve a lean fuel condition issue and a number of other things. Who bloody knows? It's a nonstop excitement with the old Freelander. But yeah, it's a really neat tool. $399 for the tool, and that includes the 3 years subscription to one car, so one type of car. So I chose Freelander because that's the only one that I have that it works with anyway. So it's good for me. But you can buy additional ones. So for instance, I do think it works with the TDCi Defender, and it would work with the TD5 Defender as well, I guess.
You have a TDCi Defender.
I do. It's just nowhere near.
You're gonna visit it very soon.
Maybe I'll bring this with me and I'll scope it, see what it says. Couldn't hurt.
You've already subscribed to another vehicle.
I'm going to have to subscribe. I'm going to have to add a subscription. I don't know what that costs. Maybe the good folks at Atlantic British could slide me over a free subscription. I don't know. We'll have to see. But anyways, yeah, it's a neat little tool. And if you have an older but yet still sort of modern Land Rover, I could see it being super handy, especially if you have like a P38 or something where there's always some kind of crazy, and the engines are so complicated. There's a million sensors, and you would never be able to figure it out without one of these sort of tools. And yeah, it's great. You plug it in and you install the software on your phone, and it goes. There's an iOS and an Android client, and it's pretty easy, actually, I have to say. Pretty straightforward, and points at the things that are wrong and fix those ones, and then I'm sure it's going to point at new different things that are wrong.
Do they make one for a Series 2A?
Yeah, they have a 2A one. Yeah, you just put it into the inspection port.
In the inspection sockets?
And it glows green or red, depending.
It's really more of a helmet with electrodes that you wear.
And it just sort of like intuit what's wrong with it.
Tells you what's wrong with you.
Yeah, it just actually what you do is you just record a sound of the engine running and email it to Ike, and then Ike.
Perfect. I've actually had people do that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I've had people do that. And the number of videos that we get of engines running or transmissions, whining or various noises, it's pretty sizable. I honestly should make a compilation of all the horrible shit that people send us.
Oh, it's more of like a whooshing noise.
Knocking.
Like it kind of makes exactly.
Like, oh, that's serious.
Yeah.
Like,
it feels like that's there's a competition in that is we'll just play some random sounds and see if you can figure out what car it's from. I think that's worthwhile. We'll think about that for ANARC. Maybe we'll come up with something. And I hear that you have a tip-top tech tip, but this comes from our restricted class of tip-top tech
don't
tips.
do this. Don't do this. This has all the hallmarks of a lawsuit and personal grievous injury. So pressure vessels are bad in general. Right. When working in a workshop, but we have a tendency to use pressure vessels a lot, and you don't even necessarily think about it, which is an aerosol can. It's really common pressure vessel for people to have in their workshops.
A little brake cleaner, maybe some spray paint.
Brake cleaner, paint, all kinds of various noxious cancer-causing chemicals. But one of the most annoying things is when, and this is especially true with PB Blaster, you'll probably know, the propellant for the product runs out before the product itself. And so you're left with a third of a can of otherwise useful product that you cannot use because it has no propellant. And then you're forced to throw it away. And if you're a series Land Rover owner and you hoard and keep everything, you feel it eats at your soul to get rid of something that is perfectly good because you cannot access it or use it. And so people cut apart the cans. They do all kinds of crazy stuff to get that last little bit. You don't have to do that. In most cases. What you can do is repressurize it. And just a reminder, don't do this.
Yeah, never do that.
Never do this, but you can repressurize it with your air compressor. Yeah. And so if you've got a blower tip with a rubber tip on the end, you can put it right over, take the applicator tip off of the aerosol can and put the rubber tip over the stub that sticks out of the top of the can, and then pressurize it a little bit. And then you can use the rest of the product in the can. So
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And again, the underpowered hour does not take any responsibility for anyone actually doing this. No one should ever do it. But it does work. That's a good
does work.
It
does work, and to relieve some of that frustration from not being able to get that last little bit.
Or certainly if you're if you're using a particular spray paint, maybe a particular color or something that maybe you've had it custom mixed or you've ordered it or something, and I always find myself needing about a square foot more than I have in that can, but you can hear it in there, and instead of ordering an entire additional can that you will use 2 squirts of and then never use it again, of course you never should refill it, but if you were to refill it, it would let you get that last little
theoretically you could
yeah.
do this, but only in theory.
Yeah. And it doesn't keep. Obviously, it's air. It's not an inert gas that they usually put in there. So it paint, for instance, will cure in the can if you spray air into it. But for a few minutes, just to get it out of there, sure does work good.
It does. It does.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it's a good one. So in other news, everyone's quickly growing favorite segment, I think, it's in the top 3 anyways, the Land Rovers in History. This week's Land Rovers in History, it looks specifically at our good friends at the BC, or British Columbia, Forestry Service up in Her Majesty's Canada. That was, for whatever reason, I guess the Commonwealth connection, a huge user of the Land Rover.
It's true, and it's the source of a lot of Land Rovers in the Pacific Northwest and all the way down into California. They've kind of seeped down into there and then up into, over into Alberta and up into, Saskatchewan and these various places. The BC Forestry Service cars have kind of spread out at this point, but they certainly used a large number of them. And there's some amazing images of BC Forestry Service trucks in under testing and in use. And it was the primary mover for a lot of the Forestry Service back in the 50s. It kind of tapered out in the early 60s, and then I think they stopped using them probably in the middle to late 60s. I don't think I've seen a BC Forestry Service example from much later than 64-ish, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if they hard stopped, quit using them, but certainly other more capable pickup trucks and vehicles became available at that time period. But prior to that, lots of Land Rovers in use, especially the late series ones. They used a ton of late series ones. So a lot of the late series ones that you see in the Pacific Northwest have their origins in the BC Forestry Service. And these vehicles were, largely the same as their civilian, we'll say, counterparts, but they frequently had logos on the doors, for BC Forestry Service. BC Hydro was another big user, and those organizations are somewhat related. So the vehicles, the spec on the vehicles is pretty much the same. The Forestry Service vehicles had reinforced fenders, so that's a quick way to sort of spot them from the standard Land Rovers that were sold at the same time period. Those reinforcements kind of go across the top of the fender and down the side, and then they tie the fenders together across the top of the radiator support. So the hood actually closes on this reinforcement, and so there's a strap of steel that goes across that's bolted to the fender that sort of supports the wings and gives it a little bit more structure. And that the visible part of this structure is probably an inch wide, and it goes up the side of the fender, across the top of the fender, over the radiator support, and then does the same on the other side. And that is attached to an inner structure on the fender that kind of goes along the side of the fender to give the fender a little bit more support inside. They figured, this vehicle is going to be driven through the forest. It's constantly going to have brush and shit banging against the side of it. So they wanted to make the fenders a little more substantial than the stock units, which, they have floppy fenders. They're aluminum, they dent easily. They don't rust, but they dent easily. So that was sort of their solution for that problem. So nowadays, when you see a car for sale, you can kind of easily pick it out because those vehicles kind of typically have those features. Then they had some other, basics, more simple modifications. Some of them have the gross vehicle weight, stenciled or written on the side, which is very common for Canadian vehicles in general. And then they also had on some of the pickups, they had a canopy that was locally made that fitted over the top of the bed. And
Yeah.
so Linus for a long time had one of those canopies, and I think I have it now, and it's really cool. We'll post a picture of it on our Instagram and Facebook and these sorts of places so you can check it out. But that was another thing that was kind of interesting and neat. It was a steel framework, and then it had an aluminum structure over the top of that. Some of them were aluminum, some of them were steel, and they all kind of vary a little bit because they were locally built. But neat canopy, the cover for the back of the pickup truck specifically. But this specification lasted, from the 80-inch all the way through the early Series 2s and 2As.
Oh, wow.
So you see that structure on top of the fenders on all of them except the very earliest BC Forestry Service cars, which I assume they hadn't decided to do that. Reinforce the fenders.
And was that a factory option, or was that something that was done at port?
It wasn't done at the factory, and it wasn't done at port. It was done at, I believe, the Forestry Service workshops.
Oh, interesting.
Where that was done.
Okay. Oh, cool. So somewhere local there in BC, they would fab up and was it a galvanized piece? Was it what? So
it was
is there a bunch of galvanic corrosion that is eating through those fenders? Yeah,
on some cars. But the British Columbia in general is not a particularly rust-prone area when you compare it to the salt-laden Middle West or something like that. Yeah. So they still survive pretty well, but a lot of the cars do suffer from galvanic corrosion where those fender supports meet especially on the inside of the fender at the bottom, where mud gets kicked up. Yep. But I would say in general, it doesn't contribute tremendously to the corrosion on the cars, but it's painted. I think they were painted originally, and but they weren't galvanized.
And is that, would you say that having seen it now over the course of what is close to 75 years, has it caused the fenders to be less dented and things? Are they in any better shape because of that than other ones?
I think they're just as dented, but because the fenders have to be removed for certain service items like clutches and the clutch master cylinders and these sorts of things, the pieces have to be removed and frequently aren't reinstalled, the reinforcements inside the fenders. So the ones across the top of the fenders, that tends to survive on the car, but the ones inside the fenders, they often don't get put back because they're kind of fiddly and
not worth it
to get put back on. I don't think it does much for the dents, but I think it does help with the sagging of the fenders. Weight gets put on the fenders, people sit on them, stand on them, put stuff on them, and that kind of pushes the fender down on the outside edges. Certainly I have some series ones with some saggy fenders, but at any rate, the that structural support does, I think, help in that regard.
Oh, that's really interesting. And so it's literally across the top of the outside of the fender, like you would see it. So if you
and it's cut at an angle, so it almost follows the wheel arch just slightly, where for that 1 inch section. We'll post some pictures up of it so you can check it out. But it's sort of interesting. You can almost immediately pick out the history of that car from seeing that simple feature on those vehicles.
And why do you think? I mean, outside of just a colonialism, why not Jeeps and things early on? They were sort of contemporary to those vehicles. Why not a Ford or a Jeep or something?
I think the reason for that is probably exactly what you said. Like there's still some animosity from that War of 1812. They're just like still upset about that.
That's right.
So I think that the French-Canadian War, they're just still a little raw. So they were like, we're not using your vehicles. That's not true. They had other types of vehicles that they used. And if you look at, old BC Forestry Service pictures, you see power wagons and internationals and, other things, but they certainly operated a lot of Land Rovers.
And a ton of flannel. Like there's not one of those pictures that doesn't have flannel in it.
And suspenders were super big, suspenders were huge. There's some great pictures of period photographs of the Forestry Service vehicles in action. There's a particularly wonderful one of a guy operating a capstan winch by himself. So he's got the door open against the fender, and he's got
pulling it in the door.
Yeah, he's pulling the working end of the capstan winch rope into the cab from the driver's seat, and he's driving up a slope. I'm not sure how well that would work in real life. Like that seems like it was a little bit staged, maybe.
Yeah, it does take I mean, I guess it's possible, but it does take a bit of effort to keep the tension on that true. And And if there was any kind of load on that vehicle, a little bit of a slip, and you're
you're
going to take off down the hill, which is interesting. Yeah, it's always. I
like the image though.
Yeah,
I
do
the
too. Yeah,
he's the guy. He's like winching himself up the hill with a capstan winch. And it's great.
Is the correct way to do that with a capstan winch to be outside of the vehicle and to winch it up without a driver? Like, what's the correct way to do that?
Well, capstan winches, which were also used in large numbers on these Forestry Service vehicles.
Makes sense. Yeah, for sure.
Typically you have to maintain tension on the working end of the rope so that the winch can have enough friction to pull on the load. So you not only have to keep consistent tension on it. If you were driving and steering with one hand, and you were having the rope with the other hand, how would you grab the next piece?
Yeah.
Your arm is only so long. So when you get to the end of that,
I don't know how you'd really do that. And you've got to manage the dead end the slack that's coming behind you. It seems like something that we need to set up and test in real life. I think that's the only way to be sure.
The only way to be sure is to be injured in the process
to get
of
Linus
proving that it didn't
in there
happen.
And have him figure it out. We'll film it. And it's going to be great. Yeah.
Well, it's a great picture, and there's some other good ones on the BC Forestry Service archive. You can check that out online. They have some wonderful pictures. If you type in keyword Land Rover, there's 80 inches driving through the forest, and there's pickups. There's camping in the forest at various logging camps and these sorts of things. They're great.
And is there any indication as to where the metal covers, the little covers for the pickup truck beds, where is that company still around?
Oh no, that was probably also made by the Forestry Service. And those, I've only ever seen 3 that exist. Most of those got pretty badly rusted.
Right.
And I may have the only good example that remains, but you can sure see pictures of them.
Yeah.
There's pictures online of the canopies in use, but certainly today I think a lot of them got taken off and
turned into backyard sheds for a little while, I'm sure, until they rusted into nothing.
There's probably several in use as sheds. The Land Rovers are gone, but the
little thing is full of wood now, and it's in somebody's backyard.
Covering up a lawnmower in the off season.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. I'm sure that's knowing the interior of British Columbia. I'm certain that is the case. We in Alberta,
there's goats living in one
for sure. Yeah, for sure. We in Alberta give those guys a pretty tough time, so it's only fair because they're all gypsies. So that's what you get.
Brutal.
But well, hey, my brother lives there, and so does most of my family. So I feel like I speak from a heavy knowledge base. But no, the interior of British Columbia is pretty incredible, and especially when it comes to going and finding interesting old cars, there is no shortage of interesting people with collections of interesting cars. It seems to be a real pastime in the interior. So very cool stuff there for sure. I'm sure that the same is true. Something asked Dixon. I'm sure the same is true of the Ottawa Valley, right? There's all kinds of interesting people with interesting Land Rovers, Dixon being one of them, but all kinds of interesting people. Obviously, a big, very historic Land Rover club up there, which I think both you and I are members of, and it's they put out an amazing newsletter and stuff, and it's just Canadian area Land Rovers are just kind of neat, because I think they're one step closer to a British car than the U.S. market models, and yet still. Staunchly left-handed and kind of an interesting thing. And there's always some interesting bits on it that are different than that. In fact, I was at a good friend of mine, Michael, who has an extensive European car collection there this last week. Went down for a visit to his place on Friday, and he'd just gotten a diesel pickup, diesel 109. It isn't a pickup anymore. It has a roof on it now, but from Italy. And it was one that had the back door with the 2 license plate lights stuck in the middle of the door. Which is I'm a big fan of that particular modification where the big light thing just goes. It's just there's 2 of them right in the middle of the door, so it's good. It's a good mod.
I'm sure they have the whatever the Italian equivalent of Canadian tire is, Italian tire,
and
it's just all plastered over with
Just,
the lights
yeah.
and mirrors and various accoutrements from those types of places.
Absolutely. That's the only way to go. It's the right way to be. Well, at that rate, we've got to get packing here and get our stuff ready for the big ANARC Dimond Jubilee. If you would like to join us there with an Underpowered Hour t-shirt, get your order in immediately, as I don't know that we'll ship it to you in time, but if you'd like one, we're going to have a few of those things on location with us. We have some new stickers. We've got some old stickers. We've got some Tiny Ikes. We've got little Defender rally car. We got everything you could ever want, and we'll be there. We've still got just a few. Very few Retro 80 t-shirts left, and a few of those sort of things. So we'll bring that stuff with us, and come in and try it on. We'll have one shirt that everybody can just try on for a couple minutes. Enjoy that, a communal shirt. See if you're a medium. And we're only going to have a medium. So if it's too tight, we'll go up a size. If it's not tight enough, we'll go down a size. But we're not taking out any other sizes. It's just one communal medium that we're all going to try. I think it's going to be great. It's like, it's a special bonding experience. And anyways, that's how everybody got scabies, I guess, at the ANARC. But,
you brought it.
It was worth it. It was worth it. Well, at that, it's been a slice, unfortunately, because of all of the scabies talk. We have run out of time for Ike's review of Nando's, but perhaps at the ANARC Dimond Jubilee, you can meet him in person and try to get a personalized review. I don't know. We'll have to find out. But at any rate, that's it for this week. We will see you next week at the Dimond Jubilee 75th anniversary in person in Greek Peak in New York. It's going to be amazing.
See you soon.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Barris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Barris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.